When I bought 5 acres of overgrown land on the edge of town, I knew it needed work. What I didn't expect was to find a 32-foot motorhome parked behind a stand of pines near the back fence line, half covered in vines like it had been there for years. I'd closed on the property in March, a quiet patch of land I planned to eventually build a small cabin on. The listing agent had mentioned the lot was mostly clear, which I later learned was real estate code for nobody's looked back there in a while. On my second visit, walking the perimeter with a notepad and a cup of gas station coffee, I pushed through some brush, and there it was. A faded beige RV, tires sunk into the dirt, windows clouded with dust. A folding chair still sitting outside it, like someone had just stepped away for a moment. In 2019. My first thought was that someone was living there. My second thought was that I needed to figure out whose it was. Because an RV like that, even one that had clearly seen better days, wasn't one. Like something I could just ignore. I knocked on the door. Nothing. I called out. Nothing. I left a note with my phone number tucked under the wiper, then went home and started digging through the paperwork from my purchase. The title company had done a standard search, but nothing in the closing documents mentioned an abandoned vehicle. I called my real estate agent, who connected me with the previous owner, an older gentleman named Walt, who had owned the land for decades but hadn't visited in years. Walt was happy to talk. He told me that a woman named Karen had asked him years ago if she could store her RV on the back corner of his property while she sorted out some family stuff. Walt, being the kind of guy who likes to help people, said sure, no problem, figuring it'd be gone in a few months. A few months turned into a few years. Walt moved out of state to be closer to his daughter, lost touch with Karen, and eventually sold the land to me without ever thinking twice about the RV sitting quietly in the back corner. So now it was my problem. Except, and this is the part that turned out to be the lucky break, it wasn't really a problem at all. It was an opportunity, if I handled it the right way. I've always been the type of person who likes doing things by the book, partly because it's the right thing to do, and partly because doing things by the book tends to work out better in the long run. So instead of just hauling the thing off, or trying to track Karen down myself and demanding she move it, I called my county clerk's office and asked what the proper process was for dealing with an abandoned vehicle or recreational vehicle left on private property without the current owner's permission. The woman on the phone was incredibly helpful. She walked me through the process. I needed to document the vehicle's condition and location, attempt to identify the registered owner through the VIN, send a formal notice to that owner, giving them a set period of time to claim the property and remove it, and if they didn't respond within that window, I could legally take possession of the vehicle through what is called an abandoned property or mechanic's lien process, depending on the state. Since the RV had effectively been stored on the land, even if informally for years there was also a path to recover storage costs once ownership transferred, which is where things got interesting. I spent an afternoon with a flashlight and a notepad, carefully documenting everything. The RV's VIN was still visible on a metal plate near the windshield. I photographed it, photographed the surrounding area, and photographed the folding chair, a cooler, and a few other personal items that had been left behind, just in case anyone ever asked whether I'd disturbed anything. Running the VIN through the state's vehicle records office led me to Karen's name and a last known address about 90 minutes away. I sent a certified letter explaining the situation, that I was the new owner of the property, that her RV had been parked there for an extended period without my knowledge or consent, and that per state law she had 30 days to contact me and arrange to retrieve it. I included copies of the property deed, my photographs, and a polite note saying I understood things happen, and I just wanted to resolve it fairly. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then I got a call. Karen was, to put it kindly, surprised. She explained that she'd gone through a rough divorce a few years back. The RV had been her temporary housing during that time, and once she'd gotten back on her feet and moved in with her sister 2 states away, she'd genuinely just forgotten about it. She apologized, said she had no idea Walt had sold the land, and asked what she needed to do. I told her the truth. She had every right to come get it, no hard feelings, but given that it had been sitting on my property for what records suggested was close to 4 years, and given the size of the vehicle and the work it would take to get it road-ready again, she might want to consider just signing it over to me, instead of dealing with the hassle of towing, repairs, and travel. She thought about it for a few days and called back. She said the RV had been a source of a lot of stress for her, a physical reminder of a hard chapter. And honestly, she'd rather just let it go than spend money getting it towed across state lines for a vehicle she wasn't sure even still ran. We worked out a simple bill of sale for a token amount just to make the transfer official and clean, and just like that, I legally owned a 32-foot RV that had been sitting on my land the entire time. Now came the fun part. I'm not a mechanic, but I know enough people who are. I had the RV towed to a friend's shop. Turned out the engine actually started after a new battery and some fresh fuel, which felt like a small miracle. The interior was musty, but structurally sound. Someone had clearly loved this thing once. There was a hand-painted sign above the bed that said, "Adventure awaits," and a drawer full of old road maps and postcards from national parks. Over about 6 weeks, I put roughly $4,000 into it. New tires, a deep clean and mold remediation, fresh upholstery for the dinette and bed, a working water heater, and a fresh coat of paint on the exterior, a deep forest green that made the whole thing look 10 years younger. I also fixed the awning, replaced the cracked windshield, and got the generator running again. Once it was done, I listed it for sale, being completely upfront in the listing about its history. A well-loved RV that had spent some time in storage, fully refurbished, mechanically sound, with a clean title now in my name. I included photos of the before, overgrown vines and all, alongside the after, because honestly, people love a good transformation story. And this one practically told itself. Within 10 days, I had 3 serious offers. The winning bid came from a retired couple who were planning their first big cross-country trip, and loved the idea of an RV with character. We settled on a final sale price of just over $20,000. After subtracting the cost of the repairs, the towing, the certified mail, and the small payment to Karen, I walked away with a clean profit of right around $20,000. Money I put straight toward the cabin I'd originally planned to build on that land. The story doesn't end there though. A few weeks after the sale, Karen called again, this time just to chat. She told me she'd been thinking about the RV a lot since our last conversation, and that knowing it had been fixed up and was now headed off on new adventures with another couple actually made her feel good, like that chapter of her life had a happy ending after all, instead of just rotting away in a field. We ended up talking for almost an hour. She asked about the cabin plans, and I told her about the green paint job and the Adventure Awaits sign, which I'd kept and mailed to her as a small keepsake. These days, Karen and I still text occasionally. She sent me a photo last fall of a sunset over a lake, joking that it reminded her of the kind of view her old RV was probably enjoying with its new owners. I sent her a photo of the cabin foundation going in, right around where her RV used to sit. Looking back, the whole situation could have gone a dozen different directions. I could have been frustrated finding someone else's vehicle abandoned on land I'd just bought. Karen could have been defensive or upset when I reached out. Instead, by slowing down, doing things the right way, documenting everything, and treating the other person with respect throughout the process, what started as an unexpected discovery turned into a clean legal transaction, a successful little flip, a meaningful connection with someone going through a hard time, and the first $20,000 toward the home I'd been dreaming about for years. Sometimes, the best opportunities really are just sitting in your backyard. You just have to know how to look and how to handle what you find with a little patience and a lot of fairness. Now, whenever I walk the property line near where the pines stand, I think about how close I came to just calling a towing company and washing my hands of the whole thing. If I had, I'd have missed out on the money, sure, but I also would have missed out on a friendship, a lesson in patience, and a story I'll probably be telling for the rest of my life. The cabin is almost finished now, and I've already decided the porch is going to face that same back corner of the lot, partly for the view, and partly as a quiet reminder of where it all started.